Okay, but I didn't realize that both committees.
Yeah, we do that. Today, came back Them's white and you got blood or something. Where's him? Let's see. You or something? I guess so. But you touched me.
Yes, no problem.
I think looks like there's a weaving.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Jail and Law Enforcement Courts Committee meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Well, I would like to add to the agenda a resolution on the ombudsman position, I guess. Since he's already given his report, I guess I will not ask for him to be put on the agenda, but I do want the resolution put on the agenda that he referred to in his report.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Yes, second.
Discussion. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Put it on the agenda.
Thank you.
It will be item, whoops. You're gonna have to bear with me tonight, folks. I can't talk and hear at the same time until I get the T-coil fixed, so. It will be added as item 8. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more amendment.
His ain't working.
Yes, sir.
I have one more amendment. I'd like to make a motion to replace item 7 with the new ordinance that County Attorney Lester has just handed out. It has some updated language that was requested by the Sheriff's Department. I'll go into detail at that time, but.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Is there a second? Second. It's motion is second. All in favor, say aye. Agenda's approved. Okay, item number 3, juvenile detention report.
It's in your packet.
Who's giving the juvenile detention report tonight?
No one, because there's no juvenile detention director. Jeannie Mack is retired, so you're gonna have to just kind of look at it in your packet.
Okay, Jeannie Mack is retired, and my understanding, she doesn't have a replacement yet, so we'll have to read it.
Carl, you want to say something?
Kendrick provided the numbers. They're in the report.
Chairman Johnson, Jeannie Mack has requested that you read the report she submitted, and since we're without official action on her position, we ask to be excused for this month's reading.
All right, thank you, Chief. Item number 4, the Enforcement Activity Report. Chief Deputy Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to the enforcement report, I'll also be doing the detention report. Major Dinger's out tonight. On our enforcement side of the house, nothing remarkable this past month. Everything's run along about usual. We are ramping up for Razorback football. That requires quite a lot of manpower from all law enforcement agencies in the region, and so we step up and do our part to ensure that they can have a safe and fun time at the Razorback games. Usually have about 50 or 60 deputies that are working that at any given time, any given ball game. There's a televised ball game with ESPN. Some of those folks bring their equipment in earlier, so we'll have people on the stadium earlier to help secure their equipment. But stuff we've been doing for several years, so we're fairly comfortable with it. And I'll add that the university reimburses us our costs on all those positions that we provide over there. So they pay us back for everything that we expend over there. Anyway, I'd be glad to answer any questions about the enforcement report, if anybody has any.
Any questions?
All right, yes, sir, we'll move over to the detention report. That's where all the news is and all the activity is. As you can see, our intakes are actually down 6 intakes from the same period last year, but our board days are up. So the people that are coming to jail are staying in jail longer, whether that's because they have a bond they can't make, or a no bond, or for whatever reason. But the people that are coming are, the trend is that they're staying longer. So that just compounds our issues with the population of the county growing. The whole area is growing, and with that, the population of the detention center is growing. So, we're struggling to come up with creative solutions and ideas. Our ombudsman will help. We think that will help some. And we met recently with a project. It's called the Bail Project, and they are an organization that puts up cash bail for detainees that are in jail that otherwise can't bond out. And they provide transportation to get them to court. They provide reminders of their court date to get them to court. Their numbers indicate that they have about a 3% of their people they put out on bail that don't go to court. But they've got some cash from some contributors around the country, and they put up the cash bail, and when the detainee goes to court, they get their cash back, and then they bond someone else out. So they are ramping up, and we think fairly quickly we'll be down trying to get some of the people out on the cash bail. We think they'll be able to work in conjunction with the ombudsman, and between the two of them can work together to identify some people that otherwise can't bond out of jail. They're going to work with the courts to try to get people that are perhaps here on a first-time failure to appear, that the prosecutors are reluctant to release on their own recognizance, to work with the judge to get that lowered to a manageable number, and then they will put up the cash and guarantee that person to appear in court. So there, I think there is some potential there to give us a little relief. We're anxious to see that get started. I don't think it's going to cost us anything for the bail project. It will be, we'll have to may have to write a new report to get them, to help them find the people that will fit their criteria, but we believe that it will be minimal cost to the county for them to come in and do their thing. So they're in Tulsa, they're in St. Louis, they're in New York, fixing to spool up in Raleigh, North Carolina. So they're all over the country with this. They think once they get their foot in the door here and they show some progress that their people will actually come to court, that then they'll solicit some of the community around for money to put into this fund so they can have that cash amount available for them. So we think that's a good thing. Our pretrial numbers, as of a few minutes ago, was 366 in for pretrial, 27 for Madison County, 79 for the U.S. Marshal. We had a jail inspection last week. Actually, we had the inspection 2 weeks ago, and then the jail inspector couldn't come to that one, but he came for a separate inspection of his own last week and spent a full day with us looking at the jail, looking over policy. And on that day, we were 92 on the floor. I expect that will be noted in his report that will probably be out in a couple weeks. So that's kind of where we're at in the jail. Business is good.
Any questions? Justice Duncan?
Yes, how many did you say from Madison County and U.S. Marshal as well?
Today we have 27 from Madison County and 79 from the U.S. Marshal.
Are we constitutionally required to hold the inmates from the U.S. Marshal?
There's a state statute that says that we have to hold them if we have the facility available and the manpower available to watch them. I don't remember that statute number, but it's a state statute. Brian might remember it. It's the statute about managing the sheriffs and their managing of the inmate population.
I just wonder at what point, with the number sleeping on the floor, does that say that we can't?
Yeah, it becomes a revenue issue as well. You know, with Madison County and the marshals, about $2 million a year is what they generate into the jail fund. So we have to kind of weigh the benefit with the cost if they don't come in. So
Thank you.
yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I look at the state prisoners and the federal prisoners. Man, those numbers are up big time. Are they still not going to give us any help on getting state prisoners, federal prisoners out of here on a more consistent basis?
You know, the federal system runs at a pretty slow pace. You know, they do their grand juries, they do their indictments, then they bring them into and arrest them, and then that process takes some time in the federal system. The states, they kind of ebb and flow. You know, they'll kick the Emergency Powers Act in, release a lot of people, make some room, and but as we know, 50% of those people are going to come back based on the recidivism rate for a 3-year look back. So, you know, they release a lot of them, but some of those are going to come back. And so, you know, with the Act 570, they can put some of those in the county jail. So we've got several in the county jail on that Act 570 that we hold as a sanction instead of them going to prison. Now, they pay us their daily rate, which is about half what it costs us, but they do pay us their daily rate to house them. But, you know, I expect the state will call for a big load at some point, and we'll move several of those down.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Justice Harbison?
How many state prisoners do we have today?
I don't have that number.
Because we've just got board days on the report.
Right. Yeah, that's how many for the month.
Right.
Times, Sheriff, you still have that number pulled up on your phone for state prisoners? No, but for new commitments? New commitments were about 45, I thought, when I looked this morning. But, you know, then we have people, the new commitments, and we have people that are back for trial, that are sentenced to prison, but they also have charges locally. So we'll have 8 or 9 of those that are here back for trial, that are actually ADC prisoners. We'll have the parole violators that are waiting to go down on parole. That number could be as high as 40. So, you know, that's that kind of jams us up on those parole violators that have reoffended to the point that they're going to go back to prison. And so that, just have to wait for them to get a bed open to get those out of here. 76 state prisoners.
Other questions?
Jay, it's fair to say that the federal and the state's pretty well going to tell us what to do. We're really no way for us to tell them what to do. Is that correct?
The state prisoners, they're committed out of our county. So yeah, once they're, I think it's probably our responsibility if we commit them out of our circuit court to have to house them until space becomes available. They're going to pay us their rate. I wish there was some way to get that increased. I know a lot of people have made runs at them to get it bumped up to the reimbursable rate, but if we could just make little bumps, if we get $2 this year and $2 next year and $2 next year, pretty soon we're going to, see a difference. But we try to hit them with $30 and they're going to run backwards every
But
time.
it's fair to say that we're not going to be able to change any of that. That's going to be on the legislative side.
Right,
the
yeah, the
senators
state
and all them
legislators
people.
will have to be the ones that.
It's really, we got to obey the law and do what they tell us,
Pretty much, yeah.
and what's really out of our
Yeah.
hands. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's 180, yeah, 182.
Item 5 is a juvenile court update. Judge Stacy Zimmerman.
I hope you've had your Coca-Cola and you've had some caffeine. All right, so I just wanted to be here and give you an update about what's going on in juvenile court and where we are. So, if you'll recall, I came to you all back in March of 2015, and I said, these are our new needs, and we need to have a bigger lobby, and we need to have more space. And I took you all, those of you that were quorum court members, on a tour of JDC and our courts building down at 885 Clydesdale. And since that time, a lot has happened. So back in February of last year, I sent you all letters saying we really need an additional judge to handle significant amount of juvenile load, and we need a second courtroom, and came to you all in February, and then I came back in April of last year, and I asked that you would support a resolution for an 8th Circuit judge. And you did that. And then I went to the Washington County Bar Association as administrative judge, and they passed a resolution to support the 8th judge. Then I went down to Little Rock last June to present, actually it was in August of last year, to present to the Judicial Resource Assessment Committee about our needs in Washington and Madison County. And they made a recommendation to the governor, the Judicial Council did, that we were in need of another judge. And it was passed by the legislators this past April. So, and the 8th judge would be created. That judge will take the bench on January 1st, 2021. January 1st, 2021. Through the election, that will be held March 3rd of 2020. And so after I came back from Little Rock, going down there to testify and really trying to get support, and the act passed, and so now we're going to have one. I met with my co-circuit judges about what should be our administrative plan, because the 7 of us circuit judges, we have to sit down and come up with a plan, who hears this kind of case, who hears that. And then we all agreed, we signed off on our administrative plan, and as administrative judge, I sent it to the Supreme Court on June the 26th, 2019. And in that plan, we agreed that the 8th Circuit judge that takes the bench January 1st, 2021, will hear 50% of the juvenile load and 10% of the domestic relations cases, which are divorces, paternity cases, which Right now, as I'm the 3rd division, I hear companion cases such as those. When you have a kid in foster care, their parents are getting a divorce, usually those cases are sent to this division, 3rd. So the 3rd division, which is our current juvenile court that hears 100%, is going to hear 50% of the juvenile load plus 10% domestic relations, family cases. And the 8th Circuit judge is going to hear 50% of the juvenile load plus 10 of the domestic relations. So I'm here tonight to tell you that this is coming, and I'm so excited, I can't wait, and I wish it were tomorrow. But, so what I would like to talk about and get everyone thinking about is where do we need to house this 8th Circuit judge? And it's not pretty and it's not fun because it's a big, big topic, as well it should be. And in my letter from February 5th, 2018, to the Quorum Court, and even back in 2015 when I had you all take a tour of JDC in the courts building, I said we need to have an additional judge to hear a significant amount of juvenile cases. And that, I believe, that court needs to be down there where the JDC is and the other court that hears juvenile court. Now let me just have you think about this. If you're an adult and you get arrested or you get a citation for shoplifting, and you get a citation from the Springdale Police, the Fayetteville Police, West Fork, Farmington, Lincoln, Greenland, Elkins, Prairie Grove, Elm Springs, and Johnson, and you have a misdemeanor ticket and you're an adult, you go to one of those courts, one of those district courts for your case. If you're a juvenile and it's a non-traffic misdemeanor, you come to one court and that's juvenile court. So imagine when my intake officers, we have 19 juvenile officers that handle juvenile cases. It's not like adult court where your probation officers are not under the supervision of a juvenile or a court judge. They are housed down, they're state employees, they're away. These officers meet with families when your kid gets a ticket for shoplifting. They've never been in trouble before. Our diversion officer meets with the family. The police officer gives them that date because they call our court, not me, but the officers, and they get that date. They come to the office, they meet with the family and the officer, and they say, okay, you're warned, you're dismissed, maybe you do some community service. You don't have a court case, but that's a family and a kid that comes to our facility to resolve their citation. Those are, if I counted correctly, like 9 or 10 different law enforcement agencies. You've got 2 different courts now that are hearing those cases. How is your officer going to tell those families which place you're going to go? Then throw into the mix that juvenile court hears all felony arrests and citations in Washington County. So if West Fork arrests a guy for a felony, and it's a juvenile, they're going to come through the juvenile court. Add to that, if they get arrested, they're going to juvenile detention center. They're being housed down there in juvenile detention. And back in the day, 22 years ago, the juvenile detention center, before it was built down there, it was in the little bitty house over here on College, and they had to transport those kids to the then juvenile court, which was where the old Mountain Inn is. I think my office was the Owl Eye now, where that thing was demolished. That's where juvenile court used to be. So the sheriff's department and JDC had to transport those kids in a van, crossing the street, getting them into court. So now think about that. Transportation. Juveniles being brought from the JDC to another court. Now, the court annex is down there on College Avenue. So when you're thinking about that, think about not only did we have over 1,000 citations last year issued for kids to come to court on a delinquency or a criminal case, some of which were filed on, some of them met with our diversion officers, they were warned, they were dismissed, they were given community service, they did it, they never had a court case. Those are cases, those are kids that are coming to us. Then think about, oh gosh, juvenile cases aren't just delinquency cases, they're also foster care cases. We went from like 100 kids in foster care 15 years ago to now I have over 300 kids in Washington County that are in foster care. Not their fault. They've been abused, they've been neglected. I had a case where the baby brother was murdered and the kids came into foster care. So these are very volatile cases. So you're going to have those little kids come into court, crammed in to wherever. Think about that. I know that it's not a pleasant topic to think about our kids who are abused and neglected, but it's not these children's fault. And I don't want to re-traumatize them for going into a building that's not suited for a juvenile that's a victim of these things. So back in 2015, when I came to court, to the quorum court, and I said, our lobby's overcrowded. This is actually one, they made an article and I actually kept it, but the lobby's overcrowded. It's 30 feet by, I think it's 30 feet by 12. 30 feet by 12. That's our lobby. And in 2017, we had over 18,000 people come through our lobby, which is 30 feet by 11 feet, or 30 feet by 12 feet. That's our lobby. And the quorum court said, look, we can't do anything now. Do the best you can. This was 2015. So we got the door cut out into the lobby. So now the parents that are the people who are coming to court in handcuffs from the jail, they don't come through the lobby where all our families and kids are sitting. They come right into the courtroom, and that helped safety. We tried to move things around. And we've been doing the best we can, and now I'm here to say, when you're thinking about, as the jail committee, the courts committee, where is it best for our kids and our families to come to the second court that's going to hear juvenile cases? I want you to think about what kind of cases are there, the volume of people coming to our court, the safety of having, if you use the court annex, the Terminella building, you have all the public defenders housed there, which is great for them, but if you have defendants, adult defendants, waiting to see their public defender, and you have one lobby, that's the lobby where your children are. Now, these aren't your children. I feel like they're my children. I think you would too. You say, these are our children. I didn't birth them, that these are kids we need to think about. Think about if you put this at the annex building, there's no free parking. Can you imagine coming to court with your kid and your family and you can't find a parking space? Can you imagine the little foster children coming in that front door of the annex building, darting out into College Avenue? So I'm here again. I feel like I'm a locust, and I just come out every year to say, we've got to do something. But I really hope that you all will think about this. And the last time I sent the letter to the quorum court, I think that was back in February of 2018, and I said there's a possibility we may get an additional circuit judge, and if we do, we really need to have a bigger lobby and a second courtroom down there where the juvenile detention center is, and the kids come there and the juvenile officers are there to work with the families. I would just say that we've worked really hard to keep kids out of detention and lower the number of our cases that we hear and that we deal with. And if you want some of this information, I sent it out to the quorum court last year, and it's the same information I presented in Little Rock to the Judicial Resource Assessment Committee to convince them we needed an additional judge. I talked about, as the sheriff's office has, the growing population. I mean, our population is to continue to skyrocket, and our area is always on the top 10 places to live. We also have different programs that we've tried to do over the years to reduce the number of kids in trouble. Remember, I came to you and I asked you to support our evening reporting center, and for a year the Jones Trust gave us free space on Emma Street. And we have a reporting center now in Emma Street with the Teen Action Support Centers in there, the robotics team, and we have medium to high-risk kids going through our evening reporting center, and you've supported that. You've paid for it. After the first year, it was free. Now we have to pay rent. It's been a huge success. We've only been doing it 2.5 years, and we were awarded the Mutual of America prestigious award, one of 11 programs across the nation for helping kids and families, and we won that award because of the hard work we do. We do a venturing crew program over the summer, medium to high-risk kids. We have gang guys that are different rival gangs. They're doing the program. They're getting along. I mean, it's amazing. We've partnered with the Springdale Police Department this summer, and they're doing our venturing crew. It's like zip lining and going into a farm and pulling weeds, and the Springdale Police have mentored these kids. And so we're seeing huge progress, and we're not just sitting around idly. But I come to you because I know you all care about kids and families, and you're going to make the right decision about where this courtroom needs to be, because that new judge is going to be taking the bench on January 1st, 2021. And also, I'm needing a resolution. Mr. Lester, can you write me one? I need a resolution to get me some therapy because Jeannie Mack has retired. So could I get a second on that? I mean, I'll pay for it, my own counseling, but you know, Jeannie Mack's been a workhorse for our kids, and she and I were working together when it was the JDC and she was assistant director. And I know that the replacement that you get will be just, well, maybe not as good as Jeannie, but a great replacement. So what we're doing in Washington County is being replicated, and I'm going to move on, but you know, I get fired up. And about the number of kids in JDC, we're doing the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative that we brought in 2013, which Benton County's doing too, and they're replicating across the state. We're doing risk assessments. When a kid gets arrested in the middle of the night, my officer gets the call. Instead of just say, send them to detention, there's an objective risk assessment they go through to decide if this kid's the type that needs to go to detention. We reduce the number of warrants for juveniles and adults. We remind them. My staff calls to remind them to come to court, and before I issue a warrant on the bench because somebody doesn't come to court, I call the parent and say, I know life's crazy. So we're doing all the things we can to keep the number of kids in lockup, get kids on the right path, stay out of trouble, but kids sometimes need to be locked up, and some kids are dangerous, and we serve those children as well. So in closing, I would say, aren't you glad it was closing, that this is coming, and you're the committee, the first one to talk to, and there you go.
We've got some questions.
Okay.
Justice Duncan.
Judge Zimmerman, I can tell you're very passionate.
I am.
So thank you for your passion. I think I'm sitting here and listening intently, and I don't know exactly what you're asking for. So it sounds like you get a crowded lobby, and you need a place to put a judge, but I don't know what's ideal. So dumb it down for me into like a bullet point where it's
Okay.
like, I need X for a lobby and this would be perfect. And then give me
I'm
like,
so
if that
glad.
wasn't great, give me like a second option. And then
I'm so glad you asked. So Judge Wood,
you lost me with the zip line and the pulling weeds.
okay, I'm sorry. What I'm saying is we're really trying hard to work hard for kids. And so what I'm saying is that we need a second courtroom built down by JDC. That's what we need. That's what our kids and our families need.
Does that solve the lobby issue too, or do you need a
Yeah,
new
we've
lobby?
got the expansion. I've got the drawings that Bob Kelly, when Judge Wood hired Bob Kelly to do some drawings of our current lobby, our current JDC, and also our current office situation. He came up with some plans, which
Is Bob Kelly an architect?
He's an architect. And so the yellow is the current building, and the pink is the proposed. So basically, we need to expand our lobby. It needs to be about 4,000 square feet. That would be the proper amount for 2 courts. And so people would come to JDC, where they always come. People would come to JDC and juvenile court, just like they do, and the police officers in the field don't have to decide, is this 3rd division, is this 8th division? They come there in the big lobby, they go to this courtroom over here, if it's that judge, and they go to this courtroom over here. We keep our existing courtroom, and we add an extra one with offices. The court side that we currently have is 5,200 square feet. The lobby would be expanded. It would be 4,000 square feet, and then the second courtroom with offices would be about 5,000 square feet. So that's what I'm here to say. I think we really need to think about where we're gonna put the 8th judge. And the reason I haven't come sooner than this was we just got the 8th judge approved by the state legislature in April. And the circuit judges hadn't approved the administrative plan until the last of June. And until we knew what everybody was gonna agree of as far as who's hearing what, really couldn't come here and say, this is the way it's gonna be, 50% here and 50% there.
This looks really good. Have you got any numbers from anybody?
No,
Like cost?
no, thank God that's
What-
not my job.
Is that, whose job is that gonna be?
Well, I think that would be the county judge and the buildings people. That's why I went to law school.
Okay, that's gonna be
Carl.
Carl's job.
Carl's job. And when we sat down and met with Bob Kelly, Carl was there, Bob Kelly was there, some of us were there, Jeannie Mack was there, and we talked. We had like 7 different meetings over last summer to come up with something that was the smallest we could think of to meet the needs of 2 courthouses, or 2 courtrooms, with detention, juvenile detention right there.
So we'll be adding the pink. Is that
Be adding the pink.
And is that going to be taking up the parking lot and stuff out front?
It will take up some, and as I spoke with Mr. Lester, there's a field right across from us, and then there's I think it's near the library, there's an open field. So I think there's going to be plenty of parking, and it's free. You don't have to look for meters and be downtown.
Well, we don't want the kids across the highway.
No, we do not.
So, Carl, is the next question for you to get bids, or what do you got to be allowed to get bids, or we're going to have some numbers if we're going to try to look at this at 2021. It's got to be in a budget somewhere.
And
To begin with, we're looking at some alternate layouts. To begin with, we're looking at some alternate layouts from this particular schematic. We're not totally sold on this is the best place down there due to the soils, the existing facilities, and et cetera. And we'll be coming back. In fact, I met Friday, I met again this morning. We're looking at some alternate plans. Then at that time, we'll develop an estimate for that, versus we'll also develop some alternatives if we're not set on this as a place for the facility. She has a very strong case. We've looked at it very closely. The judge and I and our staff, in my mind, this is the best place for this facility. Now, cost, we'll come back with some legitimate figures to tell you what this is going to entail. There's a building cost, there's infrastructure, there's parking lots, and all to consider. So that's where we are today, and it's our plan to be in September to come back with another presentation to you.
So are you thinking maybe that whole facility will move somewhere else?
No, the JDC will stay where it is, but I don't feel like the front for the total facility is the optimum layout,
Okay.
because it encroaches on the front parking lot. The soils are not good up there at all, so, for their structure. And so let us do our engineering, let us get our architects in line, and next month we'll come back with this scheme or this layout with some figures that you can be dealing with. We need to address this because this is a 2020 budget item.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yes.
You want to kind of explain how we might pay for this?
Well,
Would everybody wait until they get the floor, please? I said Justice Jenkins and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My
JP.
question, I can add that to my question as well, if you'd like me to, JP Harbison. But my question to you, will there be multiple bids? Will there be multiple bids on a project like this that we can look
Sure.
at, rather than just bring us in the numbers?
Yeah, we don't have exclusive, we put things out for bids.
The reason why I asked was because when we were talking about the sound system, what was presented to us was from one company, not multiple, or one business. So I was just hoping that we would have more options to
Well,
look at.
I wondered, since you mentioned the sound system, I spoke today with Sydney. I'm not solely convinced that we're getting the, not an elated price, so we're going to go back out and look at some other firms on this presentation, and we'll have, in September, we'll have some additional bids.
Thank you. Appreciate
And
that.
this project will be a conventional project, advertisement, bidding, and the total standard procedures that government does business under.
And how are we looking at paying for something like this?
Well, there is some innovative financing. There is a non-innovative financing, which is from funds. We're going to look at some potential of, we have an outstanding bond issue, and Brian and I are looking at how that maybe we can do some refinancing or on that aspect, and without having to go all the way through a bond election and all of that. So we need to look at a way to finance this project and get it built in 2020.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Wait just a second.
Thank you, Judge Zimmerman. Justice Leming.
You said we really need, and honestly, if it's going to go to work 21, honestly, it needs to be built in 2020.
That's right.
It needs to be done toward the end of the year, so it needs to get on the budget and get figured out what we're going to do if they're going to go to work.
That's correct.
So
We have roughly 5 months to get our
ducks in a row.
ducks in a row, and then when funding's available, then we need to have a year for construction of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So I couldn't in good conscience submit our juvenile court budget. I know this won't be in the juvenile court budget without bringing this to you to say, this is what we think we need to facilitate the services for kids and families. So that's why I'm here today, to just put that out there, because this judge will be taking the bench on January 1st, 2021. And so I just wanted to let you all know kind of where we are. So I appreciate it. Don't look so, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We're now at item 6. Sheriff Helder, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I told you what we were going to be doing, just to kind of in keeping with trying to come up with alternative solutions. I think you see that with Jay's report and others, that we're not just sitting around idly waiting for things to happen. This modular unit is, that's all it is an option. I'm losing track of time. I'm going to say within the last month it was that my staff, Carl Gales, Benton County Sheriff's Office, went to Greene County, and even our great reporter, Tom Sissom, traveled along to see what the projects were all about. But we went and met with the sheriff in Greene County that we're having a lot of the similar problems we're having with just a robust economy, significant growth in the area, fell way behind in the housing of detainees. And in fact, they were spending several $1 million a year just to house their inmates somewhere else. So they were actually, out of their budget, paying somebody else to house inmates. Well, this company, which is about 40 minutes outside of Springfield, developed the plan and idea to develop these modular units, if you will. And they take, you can see in the brochure, I'll butcher this whole thing, but in my mind, this is what it is. They take tractor trailers, Great Dane and maybe one other company are the trailers they use. And they work with the customer, the sheriff or whomever, to try and determine what are their space needs, how many beds do you need, are they open barrack style or is it lockdown type style, and then they design it and develop it. However many trailers it takes, they do it on site there. They harden the trailers with stainless or whatever material is determined to be the best suited for the project. And at the completion on their site, they will then, once we've done the groundwork and got everything ready for them here, they bring it in. They trailer it in and they put it together on site. Because there would be multiple trailers that have to fit together. The beauty of what they do is if you're in a situation like we are, having a hard time determining what we're going to do as far as expansion and get it done, this can be a temporary fix. They have a lease program to where you can lease for 2, 4, 6, 8 years, however far down. And I think the longer the lease, the less it costs per day. I think if you see in here, one of the things they commented on at Greene County was they went from however much they were paying, $54 a day, that it's costing them about $7 a day per month per prisoner. I don't know if that's a sweetheart deal. That's not actually what they quoted us. They actually haven't even quoted us anything on a lease. But what I did find out after we came back, we gave them tentative idea if we wanted to do 210 or 12 beds. If we bought it outright, it would be like $10.8 million. If we lease it, I don't know that we're going to get too deep into this to find out what that looks like unless there's some kind of significant buy-in that that's the direction we need to go in as we're waiting. I apologize, allergies, I guess. Some of the things they do, if you look at the top left corner on the inside of the brochure, evidently, and we did talk about this at length, but they don't have the same standards in Missouri as far as spacing needs that we do, because you'll notice there's 3 stacked bunks, and I mean they're about this far above each other. We can't do that. So whenever we gave them the specs and we wanted the 200 plus beds to get us through, it was a larger facility because we had to have more space. One of the other things that's great about it is whatever your heating in there, your plumbing, any cost associated with operations of the facility, as long as you're under lease, they pay for. They'll come, they'll contract with somebody locally to fix the stuff. If that day comes, whenever everybody agrees that we can no longer put off doing an expansion, a permanent expansion, once that's done, they come in, they haul it off, the fencing that they put up, all of that stuff, it's gone as if it was never there. So that part is interesting to me. I've been in contact with this gentleman for about two years. I'm sorry. I found pretty good value in what they were putting out. It was a unique idea to help people in similar situations. But it's like anything else, it costs money. we'll find ourselves, in my opinion, we're kind of back at square one. It's, do you spend a great deal of money on the front end trying to get it done, or a lesser amount, but you still got to come up with that funding. And guess what? The 10.8, if you were to buy it outright, that's just that initial cost. We would have to hire additional personnel. Your food costs are going to go up. Thank you. So, kind of where we're at. I mean, obviously, I'm not here for you to make a decision or anything. I'm just keeping you informed that we're not just sitting idly by and letting the grass grow and trying to figure out, or, just setting on this one option we gave you. Carl has some experience with similar buildings through the military. Whenever he was doing contracting and going overseas, they would take the containers and convert those into living quarters. And then so some people throughout the United States have developed that container idea along these lines. So there are options, but they all cost money, okay? So there's nothing free out there. But I want you to know that that's an option. If we really get to a point where we go, look, we can't sustain this anymore, we got to do something. This is an option for a temporary fix, okay? And we can really get with this group or whoever. If we got serious, then obviously we'd put it out for bid to get more people involved in the process, find out what the actual costs would be on a lease program, which I think would be the best suited. I think Benton County, I don't want to speak for them totally, but I think they're just about prepared to make a proposal to buy the modular units, because I think they have the ground spacing to make something like that work. So, but here again, that's just casual conversation with the sheriff. Okay, that's what I know about modular units.
Sheriff Hilton, I want to thank you for taking the time to go do this and work with us and keeping us up to date. What is the timetable if we were to commit to something like this? Did they talk about that any?
Yeah, and it depends on where they're at in process with other groups. They've got a major project right now that they're doing for a sheriff's office in Idaho. At the completion of that one, they're ready to go with the next project. It's kind of as the availability comes along. So I think, Jay, if they were able to drop down, what did they tell us, Carl? Do you remember? Ballpark?
Technically, when we were up there,
Yeah.
it was the first of the year that they would try to start our project.
But about how long would the length of the project be?
About a year.
Yeah, it seemed like it was eight to 12 months, once they started.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Other questions? Mr. Yanez?
Thank you. Sheriff Helder, what is the increase in manpower for these units?
Of course, that's a guesstimate. We've just been kind of kicking it around as far as how many shifts and people, and Randall's not here tonight to refresh my memory. I've been off for a couple of weeks, so I haven't been on those follow-up conversations. Rough estimate would be probably minimally 20 people. It'd be like a 5 per shift. We do 12-hour shifts, so it'd be 5 people to cover just this facility. So you're talking $500,000, just in personnel costs probably.
Other questions?
Thank you. Sheriff Helder, how do you feel about the project personally? What did you come away thinking about it?
Well, here again, my thoughts are this. They haven't changed. I think we're going to have an expansion. I'm all in with trying to get, like Stan's project, go on to see if we can recognize some significant impact. I loved the conversation, which I missed because I was home convalescing with the Bell project. I asked Jay, I said, Jay, what's the downside? Is there a downside to this thing? And he said, I really couldn't find anything. He said, I think that it's just as if a bonding company were to come in and bond these folks out. So why would we not be in favor of this? And you know what? It could positively impact our population, to help us identify some people along with the work that Stan's going to be doing to help identify the proper people that they will, in fact, put their money up on. We won't know until they get in there and find out what the numbers are, because I would still maintain we're letting go the low-hanging fruit, okay? Just remember that. At the rate of over 200 a month, we're releasing people that would otherwise be bonding, but they're all misdemeanors. The only misdemeanors we will keep are the commits from courts that they are at their wits' end with this thing, and they're just like going, you've got to hold them for a bit, and we'll do it. But that number's like 12. We won't release without bond domestic violence people. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. All I can do is tell you we're gonna work with these groups and see what the outcomes are going to be. But I still maintain that the expansion is going to have to happen in concert with programs. I'm not against programs. I'm not against any of this stuff. But I think without teeth and the ability for people, whenever they commit to doing something, a program, but they fail to do it, you've got to have the ability and bed space to put those people back in. Because remember, by and large, this population is, they're not good at obeying rules and they're not good at getting along with people. Okay, so that's my opinion. Hadn't changed. It's going to have to happen.
Thank you, Sheriff Helder.
You're welcome.
Sheriff, how much do you think it's going to cost us, just a rough, wild guess of like a 200-bed plus personnel per year?
With the personnel?
Yeah, with the personnel and putting one of these trailers or this facility on our facility.
Well, if we lease it instead of buying, so let's just say we got it to the $30 a day like the state reimburses. And so what's the math on that? Is it 600 or if you did 200 times 30? Jay, you're my mathematician, so it's, what is it? Okay, all right. So let's just say 200 times 30 times 365.
50.
Right? And then probably add in another 500 grand for personnel costs. We've been told by the sheriff and the company that our utility costs for that facility would be way cheaper than what we're doing in that humongous jail that we've got now. I don't even know how to ballpark that part of it, Willie. But then our food costs. So it would be, with our numbers right now, we're down under $1 a meal. We're probably right at around $96 or 96 cents a meal, times 3 a day. So if that's 200 people, it'd be $3 times 200 times 365. Okay? You said you could do it, so I'm counting on you. So, okay.
That's $2.6 million a year.
Okay.
That's just going to be temporary. So the longer we kick this down the road, that's money that's well wasted, the best I can tell. So I just don't understand why people can't realize we need to get a jail built to save everything that we're wasting. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions for the sheriff? Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll do a better job at grabbing Stan's collar. I just couldn't chase him down quick enough. He's gonna know next month he reports to this committee. Right, Stan?
We'll coach him.
Yeah, we're excited about that getting started, if for nothing else, to kind of find some folks that we're missing, so.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
Thank you.
We are at item 7, which is a revised ordinance to establish a daily fee charge to municipalities. Justice Deakins.
First of all, what I want to do is I want to point out the changes that were made to this prior to the meeting. I want to get all ordinances sent out in time for everybody to review them, so this is out of character for what I usually like to do. But we had some input from the Sheriff's Department that they wanted included on this ordinance. So if you look at Article 1, we have revised the daily use fee to $63.12. That's a revised number that the Sheriff's Department felt more comfortable with than the original number we had in here. On Article 2, starting after it says defined as those offenders who are, there's language changed to incarcerated for charges placed on them by municipal law enforcement officers. What the Sheriff's Department there is wanting to protect is if a municipality picks up somebody on some sort of other warrant than what their jurisdiction would pick them up for, they're not having to pay for that particularly. And then Article 3 has been inserted, and what was originally Article 3 and 4 is now moved down to 4 and 5. And Article 3 says if a prisoner changes resulting from, if a prisoner has charges resulting from multiple law enforcement agencies, the daily fee shall be shared equally by those agencies. So overall, I bring this back to this committee after having a lot of input and buy-in from several interested parties from last month's ordinance. So the intent here is that we're setting a baseline as a county of what it costs us to house prisoners and what we need to be reimbursed for. What would be particularly of interest to everyone is we heard a lot from the mayor's last meeting and their concerns about how they would like to do this. They would like to partner with the county and work through interlocal agreements. That most importantly is handled in Article 5 that says any municipality that enters into an agreement with the county would be exempt from this daily use fee and will go by that ordinance. My goal here is to empower the sheriff and the county judge to go out and partner with our municipalities to get the help we need from a budgetary standpoint. So I would like to move that we pass this to the quorum court.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Yes.
Okay. Justice Harbison?
Well, I seconded it. I think this is a good start. It gives those cities, we stayed with our agreement, if they want to participate in that interlocal agreement. And if they don't, then this court is stepping up and say, well, these are the options. Thank you.
Justice Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the questions I had about how the 6312 rate was figured, and one of my concerns is I know that we have looked at Benton County and the way they charge cities for their use of their jail. However, here we have a sales tax that the voters of the county passed that the cities are already paying. So in a way, I kind of feel like we're charging the cities twice, and I wondered if there was any attempt to account for that in the setting of this price. Because I do feel like in a way we're asking our cities to pay twice, because we're charging not only every citizen in the cities, which is the bulk of the county population, the dedicated sales tax for the jail, but now we're asking them to pay the full rate for their prisoners. So I guess I just have a hard time figuring out how we're coming up with what the cost to the city should be.
We've been picking up the slack for $1 million or close to $1 million now for about 5 or 6 years. We no longer can do that. And I think in the interlocal agreement, I think there is some language that once the cost of the jail is met or the prisoners are met, that then that fee may not be the same. Of course, our flat fee will be the same. So yes, the interlocal agreement where the county judge sits down and talks with the mayors and they work out what they want. And I'm sure, that I just don't believe the cities are going to be charged twice for our services that we are providing for them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing you've got to remember is that the entire county is paying a tax that's based on support of the jail. And that tax is not sufficient to cover the costs. And so this is a matter of going ahead and spreading that cost with the cities, just like the rest of the county will be paying part of that cost. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's not treating any part of the county any different than the rest. So that's my perspective on the situation.
Other comments?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone on the committee had a ask a question before I did. A really quick question. It says that the daily fee will be shared equally by the agencies if there are resulting from multiple law enforcement charges. What kind of a mechanism is going to be used to?
The sheriff will handle it.
The sheriff will handle it. Is that like thumbs up?
Can I have Jack just give you a brief explanation of what
I
he's
would
done?
like to hear that.
It won't take just a second, but I'll butcher it.
Thank you, Sheriff Helder. Thank you, Jack.
Hi, I'm Jack Kimball, the Technology Director for the Sheriff's Office. We recently implemented a system at the Sheriff's Office to try to kind of preemptively start calculating and ciphering on this. We are definitely still working the bugs out with that system, but what that system does is when we enter a charge for every person that gets put in our jail, we know what agency was responsible for that arrest, whether it be a probable cause arrest or a warrant arrest, and we're able to indicate that in our system. Like I said, we just started this 4 days ago, so we don't really have any. I don't have any real data right now, but I feel comfortable that once we work all the bugs out of this system, and if you pass this ordinance, it won't take effect until the first of the year. So we have at least couple months to work the bugs out, but we should be able to indicate that 2 or 3 agencies will have active charges on that person and be able to split those charges between those agencies. Yes, ma'am.
Jack, would you be able to estimate annual cost by, I guess, by city or municipality based on the data that you have historically? Like, could you take a 52-week rolling time frame and say this is what it would cost for you as an estimate?
We have some estimates. I use that term very loosely because we do not currently, before 4 days ago, track 100% the information we needed. So I did some ciphering and some calculations and got an estimate.
Okay.
We do have that. We didn't have an amount because nothing was really concrete as far as a daily rate. So we'll make, depending on how you pass this ordinance or pass it on to the quorum court, we'll make the adjustments for that rate. And then we'll be able to give the cities, I have a 2-year, the previous 2 years, and then estimates on this year based on 6 months, the 6-month usage for the beginning of the year that we can, of course, double for 2019.
Perfect. So it seems like that would be a major concern, as we've heard from different mayors and municipalities, is they're curious. They're all scratching their head, how are we going to know how much to pay? But if we can give them, hey, here's data to support historically what it would cost, I have a feeling you can get pretty dang close to what the actual cost would be projected out.
I feel comfortable with the estimates to the best of our ability. Obviously, the estimates they're made based on some assumptions, 30-day arraignment times and things like that. So they may not be precise, but I feel it'd be a close enough estimate to get people started.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Sir.
Other questions? Other comments? Are you ready to vote? Public comment?
Sure.
Beth Koger, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I have just a couple of things that I wanted to point out. Let me see. The first one is when we're talking about some of the new things that we're working on, like the bail bond fund and the ombudsman and the other things that we have going. I want to say that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, they implemented some of those same things, and it reduced their jail population by 30%. So if we can do that here, that would get us down to around 500. That's just something to think about.
Mrs. Koger?
Yes.
Are your comments germane to this ordinance?
Oh, I thought you meant,
we need public comments germane to the ordinance under consideration.
Oh, I'm
We'll have
sorry.
another period for public comments.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I wanted to ask a question. I don't know if I potentially can ask a question, but I'm curious about the amount that was put into the ordinance, and just wanted to understand the 63 that got changed on it. I just wondered if we had discussed earlier, I didn't know if I had heard how we arrived at that amount. Was that based on like a one of the audits? Because we looked at a lot of the different audit numbers, and that's not an exact number that we, like there was like 62 something. I mean, is that something we can ask? Maybe not. Sure. Oh, okay. So it's from one of the many audits probably is the number that it arrived. And I guess that's kind of my concern going to what was mentioned by one of the JPs earlier, was that I'm a Fayetteville citizen, and knowing that there's the sales tax that's in place today, as a county resident as well, thinking about that we're already paying that county sales tax to provide for the jail, and then worrying about, as a citizen of Fayetteville too, the potential for the budget implications. So I hear we're going to do some analysis, and so I'm hoping to understand what the implication is, knowing that Fayetteville will have to make a decision about the interlocal agreement. Is the interlocal agreement something that is going to be something that the public's going to know about as well? Is that like a daily rate that's different than the $62?
It's an agreement made between the judge and the localities.
Okay, well, that be something that's public, that we're able to see? Okay. Do we know what the interlocal agreement looks like, the way it's drawn up today, that our cities are looking at? Is it not currently drawn up, or you just haven't had conversations? I'm just trying to figure out where we are in that process, I guess. Has it been before the cities?
It's in the process of being drafted, and it won't be finalized until all this is taken care of.
Okay. So basically what we're saying as part of this ordinance is saying that it will be this about $63 a day if you don't participate in the interlocal agreement. That's what we're basically saying. Okay, I just wanted to get clarification. Thank you.
Other comments? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of an ordinance to pass this ordinance to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Opposed, no. Motion passes. This will go to the quorum court. Whoops. Item 8 is a resolution by Justice Harbison.
We have a resolution. Do you have a copy of this? Okay. Do you want to read that, or do we need to read it, or? Okay. I'm going to read the title, a resolution encouraging all criminal justice agencies throughout Washington County to adopt the principle that no person should be detained in the Washington County Detention Center awaiting trial solely because of poverty. Now, that's a title, and all of you have a copy of this. I'm going to move that we pass this on to the full quorum court, this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Any discussion?
Got one over there.
I would, not that I'm necessarily opposed to this, but I'm wondering what the purpose behind it is. Sometimes I'm afraid when we stand up here and pass resolutions that we're making an assumption that we're not already evaluating people's poverty. And so I don't know if you want to talk about that, or maybe Dr. Adelman would talk to it a little bit more.
Dr. Adelman can, or, it's just that people that are being detained in jail will not be detained because of poverty. Now, if they may be in poverty, but if they have extensive issues, then they don't qualify for this. I mean, poverty is not the only issue. But if it's the only issue, they should not be detained. And Dr. Adelman, if you want to speak to this.
1 minute. Other questions or discussion? Justice Duncan?
So, yeah, I guess my question is this necessary for you to be able to do your work? But that would be for the potential ombudsman. And it sounds like it would be beneficial potentially, but not necessary. So that's, I guess, my question for him. Does this have to be passed to do that?
Let's let him get up and talk.
Mr. Alderman, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I suppose in a technical sense, you could say maybe this is not necessary, perhaps as a legal, as a technical matter, but I think what we're all kind of in unison here on, and I'm really happy to say, again, the police, the sheriff, the prosecutor, probation, is kind of the effort, and it's a justice issue, sir, the effort to make sure that people who are in jail are people who need to be in jail, again, to protect the public safety, because they are undue flight risks. And part of the savings that's taken place in Tulsa and other places has been getting people out of jail, and it's somewhat, you could say, outside the box thinking. Outside of maybe the traditional thinking, but it's a shared approach, and that's really what I'm trying to beat the drum for here. A shared approach, not just by the quorum court, but by the cities, all the agencies concerned, that it really be a priority, and part of what the previous discussion here was about with the expansion and modular units, kind of the unspoken truth here is that jail space, prison space for sentenced prisoners, for pretrial detainees, is not an infinite commodity. It's not something, this is experienced all around the country as well. You can't just build your way. We can't just build our way out of these problems, and other state and city governments are facing this as well. So I'm really trying to get this, again, beat the drum, be a drum major for the notion that we're dealing with a finite commodity, and there are people, as Sheriff Felder said, and I couldn't agree more, that do present a flight risk and a safety risk. They need to be in jail, but if we can get at that population that is there only, as I said last month, only because they can't rub two nickels together to make a modest bail bond amount, then we're not only going to be saving the taxpayers money, this is in fact going to be a more just system, because people won't be in jail because of poverty. Somebody's got the finances, they can bond out. Somebody can't bond out, they sit in jail and wait their trial, and there is frankly a justice issue. But I think kind of all the pieces kind of come together around this idea that it makes sense to manage a finite commodity, which is jail space, and really for this quorum court to, again, encourage every agency involved. And again, frankly, I've not heard any real dissent to that proposition. So it's really that's what I have to offer. If you find that helpful, sir.
Justice Washington.
Thank you. As I'm reading through this, I understand the sentiment behind it, but I think that using the word poverty is a little confusing, because I think what we're saying is that no one should be detained because of their lack of financial resources. And so when we use the terminology poverty, what does that mean? Are we talking about someone that's at 100% of the poverty level? Like, how do you define poverty? That would just be my question.
Okay. Thank you. Again, I don't seek to use that word poverty in a technical sense as to meeting certain income or net worth guidelines, and I'm not married necessarily to that word poverty, but inability to bond out through usual traditional means. So the word poverty maybe slightly loose sense, but again, someone who's in jail simply because they can't afford to bond out.
So I guess my point was that maybe if it was worded that way, that would make more sense, and it would better convey the sentiment behind it than just using a loose term like poverty, because how do we define poverty in this sense?
That would be very consistent with my intention in offering up this resolution. If a phrase, inability to post bail or bond through traditional mechanisms is better than the word poverty, because that has some other connotations. Again, I'm not fixated on that word particularly. And if there's an amendment to the resolution, I would consider it a very friendly one.
Justice Washington?
I would like to amend the previous motion and to replace the word inability to, I'm sorry, what did? Poverty. To replace the word poverty with,
Because of inability to.
May I take a shot at that?
yes. Whatever
Solely
you
because
said.
of inability. Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Let the committee make the
He's gonna,
decision.
he's telling me what he said. Yes.
He's recommending.
Can you repeat what you said earlier?
Okay, solely because of inability to obtain pretrial release through traditional bail/bond mechanisms.
Okay. So I would like to amend the motion to replace the word poverty with inability to gain pretrial release through traditional bail
/bond.
/bond.
She's got it.
We have a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second. Well, yeah.
Any discussion on the amendment? Question is vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The amendment passes. So we ready to vote on the original motion. Okay, all in favor of the original motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Well, with the amendment. The motion as amended passes. We're now at the public comment period.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
have a
Chair.
12-minute period, limited each individual to 3 minutes.
Okay, Beth Coger, Fayetteville, so I get to say mine again, I guess. I'd like to point out that in Tulsa County, where they implemented some of the same programs that we're talking about here, they reduced their jail population by 30%. If we can do that here, that'll get our jail population down to around 500. Also, with reference to Canyon County, Idaho, that Sheriff Helder mentioned, Sarah Moore and I visited with Captain Darren Ward in Canyon County. And I just want to tell you, since people have been asking about numbers tonight, this is what Canyon County, Idaho. Right now they have 477 bed jail. They want to up that additional 122 beds. That will be 28 trailers. For those trailers, they're paying a down payment of $4.2 million. To start the project. They'll have to pay another $4.2 million when the trailers are delivered. And then after that, they pay $1.3 million each year. Now, remember, that's for 122 beds. And also another one problem that they had in Canyon County was getting permits and meeting the jail standards, and they had to hire an outside person to help them get the permits. So those are things I just think we should think about. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Thank you, J.P. Johnson. Gladys Tiffany, Fayetteville. I was kind of disappointed that the survey on that was voted on at the court last time didn't make it onto the agenda because I was thinking that the study about the justice system in Washington County would go through the jail committee. So I'm curious about what the process is going to be for implementing that study, and I wonder if anybody has information about that. I mean, now that it's funded, what happens next?
The judge will send an RFQ, a request for proposal.
Okay. Do you have any idea if that's what the situation is with that? Okay.
There's a meeting this week of the Criminal Justice Advisory Board. And so amongst other things, that is something that will be discussed among that group. I believe that's the plan, to talk about a little bit, get some information on scope of work for that particular assessment.
Okay. Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Other public comments? Other public comments?